Hello, my friends. Welcome to Summit, 6th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And as I'm diving into the readings this week and preparing, this story kept coming up in my head. At my first job as a professional, like out of college, my first professional job, I worked as a youth minister. And every now and then, my priest, who I worked for, would come in and he would say, hey, if you could get anything in your budget right now, if you could get anything for ministry, what would you want? And it kept me on my toes because the first time it took me off guard, I was like, dude, I don't, what a great question. And he was asking because sometimes there would be people who would approach him and say, we want to donate to youth ministry. What can we donate to? And he always wanted to know, one, what those things were in case he got asked, but two, he wanted me to be thinking, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? Like really want and really need. Sometimes we have wants and needs that are frivolous little purchases like impulse buys, a candy bar at the checkout line at Target. I always like the Reese's Big Cups that have a bunch of other stuff in them. It's beside the point. But then there are bigger things that when someone's like, hey, no, I can do something life-changing for you. What do you need it to be? That we step back and we're like, I don't know. Like, what are the big things? If somebody were to say, hey, I'm going to change your life right now, but I need you to tell me how you want me to change it. Would it take you a second to think about that? Or is there something that's just in the forefront of your mind right away? We get an interaction like that today in the gospel, but before we get there, we got to go through the first reading. Coming to us from Leviticus. Leviticus is one of the books of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament specifically, that discusses holiness, what it means to be holy, what it means to live in relationship with God, and it's a lot of rules. Leviticus is one of those books that people will pick and choose things from to try to discredit the Bible. So they'll find different rules and they'll say, see, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This is crazy. Leviticus is where we get a prohibition against like eating shellfish, for example, and we don't have a prohibition against eating shellfish, but it's in Leviticus. And you got to know that Leviticus was also a rule book specifically for the Levite tribe, who were the priests of the people of Israel. A lot we can learn from it, and then there's some things that do need context. Today's in the first reading, you might be a little bit confused as to why we're talking about leprosy. Leprosy is a skin disease, specifically Hansen's disease. It's caused by bacteria and is a disease that afflicts the skin and causes, blisters, sores, that sort of thing. But when we say leprosy in our modern context, we're talking about Hansen's disease. When you hear about leprosy in the Old Testament, this could have been any number of skin diseases. You have to remember that at this time, thousands of years ago, people had an understanding of biology a little bit, but not a total understanding. So there were lots of skin diseases that one could say might be leprosy. A teenager with really severe acne could be somebody who is considered to have leprosy. If there's a boil or some other skin ailment that somebody has that isn't Hansen's disease, what we know as leprosy, you might say, oh man, these people have leprosy. And it almost seems kind of cruel as we read Leviticus because these are rules for dealing with people that have leprosy. They need to walk around shouting, unclean, unclean, and they have to dwell outside of the camp. They're really pushed to the margins. And because people didn't have an understanding of how these skin diseases were transmitted, they were yelling unclean and dwelling apart from people so that they wouldn't contaminate the rest of the group. So this is one of those prohibitions that has a practical communal sense to it. It's less about holiness and almost more about here's how you deal with this as a community so that skin diseases don't spread. And some skin diseases do spread by contact. We know now a lot of them don't necessarily spread by contact, but at that time they didn't. So they have this rule. And what it does, though it's designed to keep the community's health intact, it actually winds up marginalizing people and hurting them. Because there are some skin diseases that clear up on their own. Some last a long time and some never go away, especially at this time when there wasn't a good way to treat it. Think of things like eczema or psoriasis, right? We need that first reading because it gives us a backdrop for what incredible thing happens in the gospel today. Now in the gospel, we have Jesus Christ and he's out healing some people. But then who comes to him? A leper. Now remember, at this point, leprosy maybe is a little bit better defined, but not totally. So this is a person with some sort of skin disease or ailment that has pushed this person to the outside. And we hear now, as we're walking through the reading, that Jesus in the Gospel of Mark is approached by this man and he's moved with pity for him. Because the guy says, If you wish, you can make me clean. Now, this is a guy who thinks, he basically is like, I'm going to get one shot with Jesus. And I heard that this Jesus is a healer. And I know what I want. I'm going to go ask him. So he's got it already on his heart. And he approaches Jesus in this humility. It says he kneels down in front of him. He begs him and says, if you will it, you can make me clean. This is a declaration of faith because the guy isn't saying, I don't believe that you can do this. If you can do this, Lord, would you make me clean? He's saying, if you will it, I believe that you can do this, but it's up to you. And so Jesus is moved with pity for him. And this is the incredible moment though. And you could gloss over it if you're not listening. It says, he stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, I do will it. Be made clean. Now the leprosy leaves this person immediately. Jesus says, go show yourself to the priest. Go show them. And kind of almost is like you have to think, Jesus is asking this person to go do what Moses prescribed to finish sort of the cleansing to be reintroduced to the community after a person has had leprosy. But you almost get the sense that like Jesus is saying, maybe there's more to it. You can guess, but I like to read into it a little bit to say maybe these priests were rigidly enforcing this law that had pushed this guy out. And Jesus is saying, those people who pushed you out, you need to go to them so they can see the power of God, that it's bigger than what they realize. But what I think is so crazy is that Jesus touches him. Now remember, this makes Jesus unclean, technically. Because if you touch a leper, you become unclean too, because they don't know how skin diseases like this spread. So maybe now you've got it and you're going to give it to somebody else. Jesus isn't afraid to extend his hand to this man. I think sometimes we fail to approach Jesus with the things that we really need in prayer or in our life because sometimes we don't always know them, but sometimes we're afraid. We're afraid for two reasons. I think we get afraid because we are afraid that Jesus won't do these things or can't do these things. And then I think there's a second fear where we're afraid that Jesus doesn't want to. And maybe that's what we read into the leper. Like, Jesus, if you even want to heal me, maybe I'm too far gone. Maybe I'm not the right person. Maybe I'm not who you want. But if you will it, I believe that you could make me clean. What if you approached Jesus in prayer this week like that? And you said, Jesus, like, I need mercy. I need reconciliation. I need healing. I need forgiveness. And I believe if you will it, you can do those things. You see, that's a different stance than sometimes we get because sometimes we think our past is too messy and our sin is too deep and we are too broken that Jesus doesn't even want to reach out to us anymore. That we've sinned too many times, we've gone to reconciliation too many times, and Jesus doesn't want to forgive us anymore. And so we almost are sheepish and we're like, well, then I can't bring that to the Lord. I want to hide from the Lord because like I'm just too much of a mess. He doesn't want to reach into my mess. But the Lord does. He does will it. It just requires the humility to seek and approach him for mercy. Is there a place in your life right now that if the Lord approached you and said, what do you want me to do for you? You would be able to say, I need you to make me clean in this area. I need you to heal me. I need your mercy. It requires the humility to know what you need and the humility to ask for it. Not demand it, but humbly say, Lord, if you will it, could you make me clean? And to get over the fear that Jesus is going to say no. Jesus never refuses a repentant heart seeking mercy. So it's up to you then to become the man with leprosy, the woman with leprosy, the outcast, the marginalized, feeling like maybe you're on the outskirts because of your sin, and approaching Jesus who can say, you are made well. And he's going to reach out and impact that area of your life where you feel most broken, most messy, most outside, and bring healing. Because he wills it for you to be made clean. That's the 6th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Y'all enjoy your week. I'll see you back here next week on Summit.